I lied. I super lied. I lied to you guys. I had to go back and listen to it. I know I said I was going to just upload it, but I totally had to listen. I had to know how it sounded, and, you know, it was supposed to just be a 5-minute declaration of intent. That I'm referring to the previous episode 0, and it turned into 30-plus minutes of repetition and nause. So I've edited that since down into something I think manageable, but I'm strongly considering titling this episode 1, Woof, Boy, Yikes, how about that last one, huh? Maybe I won't. Maybe I will. We'll see. I should probably name it something more apropos of the subject matter we're about to get into, which... Speaking of which, it is a podcast we recorded back in August. So what you're about to hear is a conversation between myself, my friend Josh, and Eli, aka Plague of Gripes. We sat down, and basically Josh and I decided to kick this whole thing off and explain to Eli a game idea that we had once upon a time in a bar, and pitch it and see how he thinks this project could have went, or where it went wrong, and so on and so forth. Of course, because it was recorded months ago, you're also going to hear me probably referring to this as a different name, like the Woolie versus podcast, or uncertain of what to call it. I'm trying to figure out the format, so a whole lot of what I'm saying is going to be nonsense for those of you who are living in the current and the future, which, welcome and congratulations if you are. Congratulations on making it to the present. I think that's a very important thing. You should feel pretty good about that. There's not, it's not something that everybody gets to do. So, hey, feel good about the fact that you are here in the present time. And, if you just look at it from a statistical point of view, if you just crunch the numbers a little bit, of all the people that have ever been people, the overwhelming majority of them have managed to not make it to the present. So, yeah, that's a cool thing. Hold that, take that as a W. We take those. But don't worry about any inconsistencies and whatnot in the content. But yeah, I'm just gonna play you the conversation that we had back then, pitching our one of our game ideas, and this isn't one we were too attached to, so I feel like we were able to kind of throw it out there and test the waters in terms of just how it feels to discuss something with someone else that's going to judge it. And as we all know, well, maybe if you don't, the man's name is Plague of Gripes for a reason. So we decided to just kind of get this idea out there, and this was one that was not too heavy on our hearts or whatnot. It was kind of just like a little fun thing. And in the meantime, since then, interestingly enough, we just kind of had a little document that was written up for this project at first, but Josh has since gone on to work on a couple of builds of this thing just for funsies. Yeah, I'm going to use that word now, funsies. So, interesting ass update with that, but this is making no sense to anybody who hasn't listened to it yet. And if you have already listened to it and you've been to the future and you're coming back to the past to revisit this audio, then double congrats. You should feel super good about that. An implausibly slower number of people have ever experienced that. So that's a really cool thing, and you should really, yeah, you should enjoy that. You should live that one up. Toast to you. So, links and information for this discussion in the description and or in the video, in the information section of the podcast, basically. So what I'm thinking for a lot of these episodes where we talk about projects that never made it, things that failed, is that if there's assets, if there's pictures you could look at, if there's documents you can read, or any sort of supplementary material, then I'd like to link that to you guys and have you check it out for yourself, and just see what it was in its full entirety almost. And yeah, not much else to say besides I hope it's good. All right, cool. Doing it. Actual start. Woolie will figure it out, episode 1. Featuring Eli and Josh. This is also going to be terrible. Hi. This is a podcast that I'm doing. I'm Woolie, and I
am stiff as a board.
Yeah.
Are you panicking?
No, I'm trying to figure out how to work this because I still don't have the idea fully fleshed out, and I'm trying to give people the right impression. If for the first 10 seconds they click on this.
I got this. Hello, and welcome to Woolie ASMR. Today, Woolie will be whispering Volume 1 of Fushigi Yugi.
Wow. That's
start.
You're actually not bad at that. But
that's a much better idea. We should roll with that.
No one knows who the fuck you are. So for starters, I guess we should introduce, because this is a new show, new podcast. You know what? Mm-hmm. Why didn't you start streaming, Woolie? Well, maybe I'll get around to it, but for now I'm nervous and I feel like there's too many streams that I'd have to compete with. But I know how to podcast. I've been doing that for a couple years, so I'm going to try this out. And I have some ideas and things that, I think I can talk about that I'm pretty good at. You know what I'm pretty good at? Failing.
Oh, boy.
Woo!
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
There's some...
Aren't we all?
This is a masterclass in failure. But
just like the opening of this new podcast.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, hey, with a minute going in, how about we introduce everybody? So, yeah, there's me, but besides me... Who else is there?
Are you going to introduce me, or am I going to introduce me?
Okay, well, you can introduce you, but then I'll introduce you after you introduce you.
Okay. Hi, I'm Josh.
Okay, that's Josh. Who's Josh? Josh is a friend of mine I've had for a fucking long time now. We've been hanging out since college, and we won't go into it, but the short version of it is, I need to enunciate, sometimes I refer to... a friend I had in college that would only talk about Digimon no matter what the conversation was. He was that guy. This is he. He's not that guy anymore.
Shamefully taking responsibility for it.
That's embarrassing.
Hey, I had my Marvel video. You got to get your balls exposed on stream a little bit too. All right? This is who you are. You're coming out of the ether, but people need a reference point.
Well, don't worry, everybody.
You don't think they're real, do you? Like you aren't seeing them in real life?
Only when I take LSD.
Okay. So...
But don't worry, everyone. My personality used to be only that he was the guy who liked Digimon, and now I just don't have a personality, so it's all worked out.
Oh.
It's a pretty blank slate. However, you know a thing or two about mecha.
Yeah, because that was the thing that I did after Digimon. It's the only shit I talked about for like a year.
Well, guess what?
Well, they do sort of lead into one another, don't they?
They do.
It took. You know why? Because you got me into mecha.
Yeah, kicking and screaming.
Oh, is this where the Gundam came from?
This is where the Gundam came from.
Dude, I had to force you to watch the first episode of Gurren Lagann.
I had to force you to not talk about Digimon, motherfucker.
Fair enough.
There is a lot of history, and we can cover a bunch of it because, yeah, man, like, there's been so many projects and so many things we've worked on over the years, and they've all come tumbling down. And rather than just keeping it inside, going crazy, thinking maybe one day, how about we just open up the fucking cage and let them fly away? Let the internet take them, judge them for what they are. This is a podcast where I want to talk about creative things, and specifically, like, ideas that I thought were cool. And you know what? Maybe someday we'll talk to other people and hear their ideas and what they thought was cool. But then it didn't work for one reason or another. And you just let it go. You let it go. You know, some of these might even come with a zip file so you can see what existed. But it's the ultimate, like, Tom Cruise looking at his copy of Street Fighter Cross Tekken and throwing it into the ocean. You know, it's one of those. So that's who Josh is.
Peeling back the NDA stickers and letting things fly.
If NDAs are applicable, yeah. You want to be careful about those, but when they're not, / if the NDA was for my own shit, then fuck it. Right now, I'm a YouTube person, and I had aspirations of other things. I kind of don't as much anymore, but I still do a little bit. But the things I'm willing to let go are the ones that I'm like, you know what, dude, that was a fun idea.
It's kind of depressing, Woolie.
It is.
It's kind of a depressing statement.
This was
I had dreams, but now I know what I am.
Yeah.
It's nothing.
I mean, look, the original concept of this show itself was a fail because it was supposed to just be called Games I'll Never Make. Who are you, Plague?
I'm Plague.
You are.
I'm Eli. I draw things. You probably know fully well who I am if you're listening to a Woolie podcast, so I probably don't need much of an introduction.
But there's a possibility that they don't.
There is a possibility. There are some people that actually say, I've seen this, that they have never heard my voice because they don't listen to your podcast.
Right.
They don't listen to anything that I do, so they just know that I exist, and that's it. So there is some element of that somewhere on the internet.
Okay, well, if I can make the bullet points real quick.
Go ahead, try.
All right.
I want to hear
He's
this.
He's Plague. He hates things. He doesn't like things. He lives on a farm. He draws titties. Yeah.
That's my life, I guess.
Yeah.
90% of those were wrong, but yes, that is the cartoon character that I am today, yes. That's true.
He lives on a titty. He draws farms.
I like every possible variation of this.
What?
None of it's good. Like, any way that you can ad-lib this shit, it's not going to come out to be roses.
That's
me.
Do you have failures in your background, sir? Because we're bringing you in to pretty much just, hear the pitch and shut it down for whatever reason. Or don't if you think it's salvageable. But,
right.
But do you have your own?
The way that I've interpreted it, the way that I have interpreted this as starting is you guys are going to develop your pitch, as it were, and I'm going to evaluate it and see whether or not it is worth keeping or not.
Well, it's definitely not worth keeping, and it's letting it go. So it's not coming from the...
That's kind of the point, yeah.
Yeah, we're not coming at this from the point of view of hey, man,
will it work?
Yeah.
Because you've already determined that it won't.
No, but it's let's put the shiny up front and kind of talk about why we thought it was cool, and then you mentioned yeah, was there something there, or
were you just drunk?
And
okay, and most of the content that I usually make, most of the people that even know who I am and have seen my cartoons or whatever, will not do things like watch my art gripe videos, which is probably the majority of the content that I put out. And so most people get surprised whenever they actually listen to them, because most of them are just very positive, sort of Bob Ross-esque. You can do this if you put your mind to it. It's okay to fail. This stuff like that. And that's the majority of what I put out. As far as my own personal failures, I've had a lot of personal failures. And one of the things that you will learn during any course of development, which I'm sure that both of you are well aware of, is that failure is a necessary stepping stone for anything to actually succeed. And not only is it necessary, it is probably the foundation for any success in life.
But you know what? Our problem is not that we were afraid to fail. It's that we took on these massive projects and we were like, we're going to do it.
Woolie? I don't believe.
We're going to do it. It's going to be awesome. Everything's going to go amazing. We're going to pay people $100 and they're just going to do amazing things for us.
I used to... There's a place called Garage Games that was around for a while. It probably still is. But it was basically the Torque game engine. You could develop on that. Lots of people, novice video game developers, people that aspired for that, would gather on these forums. And teams would merge together and fall apart in the space of months constantly. So within this community, it was well known that was the cliche, what you just said. That's the cliche of every early development team that comes together. This initial burst of this welling of excitement, we're going to do this, we're going to do this, we're going to do this, followed by, we can't do this, or that, or these other things. Actually, the whole idea is a pipe dream. Let's just stop. We give up.
I mean, so there's something to be said about the fact that with almost anything in life, willpower comes and willpower goes. Discipline is the only thing that makes it work. You have to be able to have a system in place where you're willing to do shit even when you really don't want to. But more importantly, that thing about failing and how you have to fail, You have to get your first shitty ideas out there in some way, shape, or form. Yeah, guess what? We didn't fucking know that. And all that...
They don't teach you that.
And all you had...
The failure destroyed you early on.
All you had was the nervousness that the thing you are... Feature creep forever. The thing you have, it sounded cool yesterday, but today... You know that you can make it better, and tomorrow you're worried that people are going to think it's awful, so you just never move fucking forward with the goddamn thing.
Right.
And
it's determination and malleability, I would say.
And you don't...
Your ability to cope.
When you're convinced that the thing you have is pure fucking gold, if you can just make it good enough, it's never going to be good enough. You're probably not that good.
But what's special here is when we did catch that, we eventually moved on to projects to go, okay, we have to get some small things out of the way.
It turns out we're a lot shittier than we thought we were. We had to start way lower.
Oh, dude. Oh, man. It's so real. We
had lowered expectations. We had to go even lower.
Okay.
See, if you have the true heart of an artist, you start out thinking it's going to be shit.
Yeah.
Which can be good or bad. Because if you start out thinking this is going to be garbage, this is not going to go anywhere, you can end up with something that's actually way better than what you think it is. Or you can be so down on yourself that you end up manifesting that destiny and producing shit. Because that's all you see in yourself.
See, I never started out hating it. I always started out with the spark of interest of, like, this is a cool idea. I don't think anyone's really done this. I got something fresh going on here. And what ends up happening is... After you recoil into your shell and you cloister up, days go by, weeks go by, and then you get to a point where time passes where you're like, I'm supposed to be making progress on this thing, but progress isn't happening, so all I do is sit here and feel guilt over it. Then all free time becomes guilt-ridden, and you have a disease. You have a fucking parasite that is...
Because then it becomes self-reinforcing.
Dude, I saw that. You spent more time feeling guilty about not working than working.
Well, when I'd work, I'd stare at a fucking blank page, and then, fucking...
That's a real big symptom in writing, especially. That's another thing. I don't really mention that too much, but before the YouTube stuff jumped off, I primarily was trying to be a novelist, and I managed to get one complete manuscript out, a bunch of short stories and stuff too. And I was shipping that around at the time whenever the first animations really started taking off, so I stopped doing that. But that's one of the biggest problems in writing, is just looking at that blank canvas, or that blank page, and thinking this could be anything, but because I don't really know how to push the cart, there's just a motionless cart, and you're like, well, I can push this anywhere, but I don't know where it should be going initially. So you end up freezing, not knowing what to do, and the fact that you aren't pushing it becomes the staple of worry for you for the rest of your life. So you just end up doing nothing.
Yeah, it's just all free time, you can't enjoy yourself doing anything anymore. And because you just feel like you should be working on something. And maybe if you go out with friends or you're out of the house somewhere, you're doing any activity that's not at home, you can pretend that, hey, I'm out of the house. It's not like I could be working anyway. But when you're in the house, you cannot enjoy anything because you're feeling fucking shitty for not getting any progress done.
I would say that most things die in the initial stages for that reason. And I think even professional game what you were talking about before, about that initial excitement that ends up kind of poisoning the project over time, is probably one of the most pervasive problems within video game development, even for major studios. Of looking at something and saying, this is going to be the next big thing, or I had this great idea, and it ends up compounding with all the problems that are reality, that it kind of ends up killing it over time. So,
that being said, some of what we're gonna get into is not even video game related. There's all kinds of genres happening here. There's all mediums of failure
at the same time.
Even within video game development, most of how video games start is something like writing. Just writing down concepts and ideas and just trying to develop those without even worrying about technical aspects.
There's something to be said for the hired gun, though. Real professionals who are I'm just here to do something. Okay, you want a programmer, I'm a programmer. Sound engineer, I'm a sound engineer. I don't care what I'm working on.
Pay me.
Yeah, pay me.
Yeah.
And if you can pay them, they'll do a good job. You have an office, you have a setup, they're good to go.
But that's a rare commodity.
Yeah.
for the most part, what ends up happening at these early projects is you find a friend who sort of knows how to do the thing you need, and you give them the task that's well beyond their capability and means, but you're friends, and they're also equally as excited. And you know what? Sure, they don't have all the talent, but their passion and excitement will make up for that.
No, it won't.
No.
All right.
Losing that one programmer is the death knell for every minor project that has ever existed. If you don't have a programmer, you are dead.
It's
every single
the programmer
one.
or the artist. You lose your lead artist, you're fucked.
Oh.
Or your animator, you're fucked.
Yeah, if you have a core style and assets that rely on one person, yeah, that's also true.
I mean, geez, like, even when it came to, like, sound and music, and that wasn't, like, I fucking threw together a couple of tracks of music on my own out of desperation.
Pretty good for something you threw together.
Yeah, I'm gonna, when we get to that time, I'll put those out there, because I'm like, if I ever wanted to make music, this isn't the worst thing in the world, it's just sloppy as fuck.
Yeah.
And it was made in desperation.
And nobody on the team was like, oh my god, Woolie, this is amazing, you should be a sound engineer
Hell
or
no.
a composer. They were like, oh, thanks, you got it done, cool.
But ultimately, yeah, when you lose your specialist, you're fucking running around without your chickens without a head.
Yeah, if we were making a game based on music and we lost our music guy, it's like game over.
Okay, get it? Yeah, hang it up. Okay, so let's do the first one, and this is actually this is less. It's weird that we're starting here because it's less of a fail and more of just a fucking drunken bar idea that just never really went anywhere, because it was like we were thinking of things that would be simple to execute, and one night down at a bar we were drinking and having some nachos and came up with a game idea that we thought, well, you just need one good programmer and one good artist, you could probably make this happen.
Yeah.
Right?
And something simple.
We were already a couple projects in at this point too.
A couple of failed projects in.
Yeah.
And at that time we were thinking, this would be a great project. After we get 1 or 2 successes under our belt, we'll bang this one out in like 6 months, no problem.
Yeah. Josh, I think we didn't really plan this out, but like at some point over the course of these failures, like, we're gonna be fucking rolling around in here at each other's throats, but we have to try and keep it, you know what I mean? Like, we're gonna be bringing up some old shit, but let's keep it as on the level.
Dude, I've traced the timeline of our friendship.
Are you implying
like
that one of these was Josh's fault?
Is just us being like, hey, you want to hang out to work on that thing? Okay. And then it ends in failure. It's like we wasted all of those hours socializing. I could have been socializing with anyone.
Could you?
No.
Okay. All right.
I had nothing else to do.
All right.
So let's get this out here so I can determine whose fault it was.
Oh, that's
okay. That it didn't go through.
All right. Okay. So we're in a bar. We're having some drinks. We get to talking.
Nachos.
And we basically go, hey, like, you don't really get to play the role of a villain super often. Not to say that it doesn't exist. Just what there's some interesting things you can explore.
Well, you get to play as the villain, but when you do, he's the hero.
Or an anti-villain.
Right.
Or an anti-hero, excuse
me.
But
what if you were just the villain? What if you had to prepare for heroes arriving? What if you're the evil, you're Garland in the castle?
If you would.
I have also had this idea, but please proceed.
Okay, so here's our version of it, and it's a budget project, but
we called it Overlord.
Yeah, that was a video game that came out. This is well before that, I think. But this is the heroes arrive in 35 minutes, right? This is basically. I'm not even going to look at this document for a second. I'm just going to go off the dome with the original because a document got written at some point, but. This was basically, here's the idea. You are, you're a villain. You don't know what kind of villain you are, right? And you start this video game, and it's essentially more or less visual novel style navigating through your environments. There could be some walking around, but for the most part, just clicking through is all you really need, right?
Built on the RenP engine.
It could be, or it could be RPG Maker even.
Hey,
but
I contributed to that engine, so.
Oh, there you go. But anyway,
that's what I'm working on right now.
What essentially would happen is you would more or less open on a series of questions, right? Almost like
what is your name? What is your mission? That sort of thing.
But not even that specific, right? Not even that specific. Like it would like simply like paint an idea of
like, are you a mad scientist? Are you a fallen knight?
It would be the vaguest of specifications of like
DM questions. In other words, you're writing out your sheet. And
what the idea would be was that like effectively once you picked a vague direction to start in, and I was one of the ideas I had was phrasing it in the context of like you're dreaming almost, and like you're trying to like picture a figure, and you're trying to like each question answers making that blurry figure a little bit more clear. Eventually, you hear an alarm clock go off, and then you can choose to keep sleeping or wake up. And at some point, when you do get up, you're in an environment that is basically the result of the answers of your questions, right? Mm-hmm. To speed through this a bit, walking around this lair that is your villain's lair, there's different objects, there's different rooms, there's places and things that are lying around. Traps as well, yes. Interacting with objects, looking at them, the amount of times you look at them, what you do, everything costs time, right? And essentially, you're woken up by one of your minions or people that work for you telling you that the heroes are arriving in 35 minutes. They're here to stop you, right? Now, everything you look at that costs time will also build your character. So your character creation process is that 35 minutes of setting up or looking at things or discovering more about yourself, and then you prepare more or less for a final battle that's played out in an RPG engine-esque kind of way.
I think the funniest part was that the only time there's a battle system is when you have to fight the heroes. And you just have to watch them go. And they're picking things from the menu, and you can't control anything.
Yeah. So, for example, right, like, there could be if in your first layer that you open up, your first room that you're looking at, you could have one corner of the room that has candles and sigils to some unknown occult thing. And you can choose to investigate that corner of the room, or you can walk over to the armor that's hanging on the wall with the sword next to it that's glowing or whatever, or you can walk down to the basement and find out what that noise, that banging and crying coming from that room down there is about. And each one of these things is going to take time to do, but the moment you choose to do that or investigate or look at it, you're spending some time, and you're more or less starting to create variables for what you're going to end up being.
I mean, I forgot about these ideas, but these are great. Like, sorrowfully gaze at family album. So 6 minutes. You are now related to the hero.
For 6 minutes.
Right. So
this poor man.
So there's one of the objects would be literally a family photo sitting on the wall somewhere. And if you walk up to that and choose that to be your first activity, you and the hero that arrives are now related. And what that relation is will be determined by your remaining activities and how you spend the rest of that 35 minutes, right?
Okay.
I like how the things that you do actually determine the things you have done. So you can like check up on the hero's kidnapped love interest.
That's the voice coming from the dungeon.
You've now actually kidnapped her.
Right. So the process of going to see, what's that noise? Oh, that's the princess I kidnapped, or so on and so forth. If you combine that with, let's say, the occult thing on the wall, then maybe instead of just being an evil like knight that has kidnapped this princess or whatever, you are looking to sacrifice it to the new god, or she's to become the vessel of your,
that was the like really that was going to be the hardest part to do, where it wasn't just that if you do things, it's not like, adding variables, but it's mutating them.
Yeah.
So, if like you apply the clown makeup and you're now mentally unhinged, then the things you say to the kidnapped love interest are very different than if you just, wear the giant like knight armor.
Of course.
Press F to apply clown makeup.
Yeah, and then the clown makeup is sitting over there on the battle station. That is your mirrors and your makeup and your you can go sit down in that corner, look at yourself in the mirror, and do that if you wanted. Of course, you could also choose to walk down that like sort of sci-fi looking hallway and prepare your giant robot. And you can essentially introduce technology and machinery and science into your character.
And the type of robot you get depends on, of course, what type of villain you are up to that point. So you can either get, I want to say the names, Full Metal Fortification Lloyd, the bestial robot, or Messer Magnus Type 3 Custom, the real robot, or Dark Lion R. Devilosaurus, the super robot.
That's terrible. Wow, that's bad.
Gold. Pure gold. Love them.
What age were you guys whenever you came up with
Don't worry about it.
Too old.
Okay.
Right? You could...
49.
Okay, so let's say you decide to ignore everything in that first room, right? Then you click on that stairs. You walk up the stairs, and let's just stare at the moon. You're on your roof, and you're seeing... the outside, right? You can stare at the moon long enough that it's like, okay, you're now more or less either going the vampire or werewolf direction. You're one of those, I'm the villain that poses up on the rooftop in front of the moon characters. Magus on top of his castle, if you would. Well, that's not his, but anyway, but like you're now in that shot.
Basement of the castle.
Right?
Good Lord, man.
And that could be your obsession, but most importantly, you need to be able to look out the window, that it doesn't cost any time to do this, and see the heroes in the distance on the horizon and how close they are to your front gate. Of course, the castle / lair / whatever also takes shape depending on the direction or genre that your villain is developing in.
That was always a good question. Like, would the castle change, or is this just a weird-ass giant castle?
Every decision has to make slight iterations change, right? It's tough. But at the very least, you'd want to have two major variables, But either way, we discussed that and went back and forth on it. But the idea would be that, like, as the heroes are arriving a little bit closer, you could almost ask your minion guy that woke you up to be like, hey, how close are they? And he'd come over and he'd be like, yeah, they're looking about 10 minutes away. They're on horseback. There's 4 of them. One of them is glowing. Has some sort of like stand ghost thing behind it. Like, like the way the heroes are.
You want the heroes to also change depending on who you've become.
The heroes basically reflect the antithesis of what your decisions are. So if you've been staring at that rooftop moon, then a Belmont is probably coming for you.
Imagine the horror scenario for the villain. You've got like Simon Belmont, like Kenshiro, Jotaro, and Guts are coming
all at the same time on horseback. But it's a party. Right? An RPG party is coming to get you. And
and if you check the news, then public opinion goes down.
I mean, more or less looking up. But no, it doesn't go down. It's free. It's free to check and see how close they are. But the idea is that as the time gets closer to the moment, to 0 hour, you and the heroes become more and more clear as to like what your exact purpose was, what your actions were, why they want to kill you, what they're capable of doing, and then when that's all been set, you've got that RPG battle where they're doing what they're doing. They had their quest. They made it to you.
The Uematsu music starts playing. You've got a badass Amano designed sprite. They've got the cute little things.
You've got 60 to 80 hours of their progress ending at you. And besides battling it out, you've got to, of course, choose what you want to say. And,
of course.
You know what I mean? Like, affect the battle in different ways. But things that you set up, like the kidnapped loved one, for example, like you can either reveal that out the gate, or you can save that for mid-battle, and then let's say you focused all your attention and your time on that kidnapped one, and then mixed it with a cult. You could have them end up being brainwashed, and then halfway through the battle, you get to whip them out as a subordinate that gets to attack with you.
So cliched, I love it.
Yeah, and so you wrap up as many cliched outcomes as possible, but you get to them in a way that is only slightly predictable because you don't quite know what you're going to get. And the main thing, of course, is your curiosity is rewarded / punished as you play the game. The moment you're like, hey, what's that? You click, you're set. You're in.
Done.
You've spent the time, you're looking at that album now.
Okay.
That's basic.
Oh boy, we actually tried to get into the combinations.
So yeah, okay. So after this initial discussion, we threw out examples and had a laugh and had beers. Josh went home and wrote up a doc of like things that he thought were particularly interesting about it. This was your, your take on some of these things, but yeah. So the combination idea of you had 1 + 2. So
See.
Forging forbidden armor, so spending time down at the forge or getting your minions to make forbidden armor, combined with dark god occultism, basically turns you into an abomination, armored like
a weird armored Cthulhu.
1 + 3. What did you get there? So
Clown makeup.
Clown makeup plus forbidden armor is what, Josh?
The armor has corrupted your mind, making you believe the hero is the true villain.
Okay, so that...
In other words, there's a lot of if-then statements.
Yes.
Resulting
Not
in
if you get a good programmer,
different dialogue
but, yeah.
trees.
That's actually the biggest problem in this is like the simple ones, like if you do this, it adds to some counter somewhere. Yeah, that's easy peasy shit. Once you start getting into all the combinations,
yeah,
you're like, you have to manually, like, that's new dialogue to write, new scenarios to script.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've been doing a lot of that myself lately. It's not fun.
Effectively, you'd have to have two. I think in the bar we pretty much decided 2 major permutations are what affect like your class.
Well, it's like,
and then you're working on details.
Like item 1 + item 3 and like item 4 + item 7, those aren't too hard yet, but like what if you have 1 + 4 + 8?
Right.
Or 1 + 4, then 8.
Well, and it would have to be items 1 through 9 are the majors, and then you'd have to have 11 through 20 as minor detail-oriented things.
Yeah,
right?
You'd have to classify them somehow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So 1 + 4 was, let's say, again, you're going back to that armor, but now you're combining it with 4, which is the family album, right? And you spent 6 minutes staring at that photo, so now you're the hero's father, injured years ago, but you can only survive by wearing this, like, corrupt armor.
Okay. I get the idea with all this. Yeah. Like, I can visualize you realizing, I'm going to have to make a multiple table.
Yeah.
That borders on like 100 grids or something.
Like we actually I wrote down like the 2 + 3, 2 + 4, 2 + 5, and most of them are blank because there was just so many to think of.
Yeah, but that's the fun part, right?
Yeah, you're stacking flags essentially is what you're doing. You're creating one flag and then wondering how it's going to interact with everything else, because once you get into stacking them, that one flag is interacting with A plus B will create scenario C. What do you do whenever C is also interacting with another set of parameters that are created by 2 other completely different flags?
Of course, it was meant
like you're running into that issue.
Of course, it was meant to be quickly replayable and such.
Of course, but let me skip ahead on this. At what point did you guys decide this is not going to work?
Well, it was more of a this is going to take
a lot longer
than we thought, but the mechanics are just RenP plus RPG Maker, essentially.
Yeah.
So we figured the technical aspects wouldn't be hard to swallow. It would just be...
In theory. Most of that sounds like it would be writing, essentially.
It'd just be time. It would just be time,
so this
right? It wasn't programming-wise out of our reach.
Actually, at the time it was. This is 2012? today I could probably do this, but in 2012, neither of us had a chance of getting this done.
Definitely not. But I guess what I more so mean is that the hard work in this would have been asset creation and writing.
Oh yeah.
Programming would have been the easier part, which is a rarity for games, right? So,
I mean,
if I was your lead, I would probably say this is a terrible idea as far as generating all these assets for what is essentially a 30-minute long character creation resulting in a single battle. And that's it. That's the game. Like, that would be my biggest question is, where is the actual video game?
okay. Do you want an answer to that, or are you going somewhere with that?
Okay, actually, let me preface this first.
Okay.
My name, Plague of Gripes, like, it's a big meme and everything. And the reason why I chose a name is because of the perception that I complain all the time, amongst other things.
However,
I actually view it more as like tearing down ideas, just looking at them and analyzing. I'm really overly analytical. Mm-hmm. So part of content creation is just being able to be extremely self-critical.
Okay.
You need to be able to have that, or else you can't make things, because everything sounds like a great idea otherwise, which results in you kind of very slowly realizing over time, oh, this won't work, and it's slowly falling apart. Whereas if you were self-critical right out of the gate, you could very carefully just break it down to its core components to the point where you realize immediately, oh, this is stuff we'll have to lay out for in the far future, whatever it happens to be.
Okay.
So, as far as like this goes, I'm not complaining for the sake of complaining.
No.
A lot of it is advocation.
Sorry, I literally wanted to know if you wanted an answer, or if you were continuing.
But that's it. Yes, I do want an answer, but not because I'm daring you to prove to me that it's a good idea.
Oh yeah, no.
I'm advocating.
Okay.
What is the game?
Okay, all right. So, I don't know Plague, but I will say that
that's not the answer I wanted.
But I will say that.
No, go ahead.
The game, to me, someone who enjoys character creators, is the fun of arriving at a conclusion that I can't tell is happening in the process. So at the end of that, watching the battle play out and the decisions and so on and so forth is a short, almost gimmicky experience.
It's a visual novel.
But that's effectively what the game was meant to be, a short, gimmicky experience.
It would be very niche, I would imagine.
Oh, definitely.
I really see this as being something...
Like, imagine someone like Pat playing this and just going, well, just tell me the table. Like, tell me which factors...
Someone will min-max this and just destroy it.
Certainly.
And I think it's not the kind of thing you're like, you're not going to win awards for making this, but you put it out there, and people go, oh, that was cool. Next.
And yeah. And, like, this is not from an era where, like, stream-made games were a thing, but this would be one of those types of games where someone throws it up on the stream, does a run, see what they get,
they're done in an hour at the very most. I
mean, that's the other question, right? Is like, how long could it possibly take to get every permutation, right? When you're mashing through dialogue, and let's say the visual novel is up to standard with Zero Escape, so it lets you like speed through all scene dialogue and it stops on new dialogue, right?
Sure.
This is something that I couldn't see it be like. So if every permutation of these, we had 1 to 8 here as the major effectors, and then the details are in the.
So we actually did a thing to limit the scope where we said you can sort of do like A plus B and then another A plus B and then they combine, but you can't go like A plus B plus C. You can't like chain them more than twice.
But I think the number of end results we had was pretty much 8 times 8, right? So if we're going with 64 major outcomes,
it's not impossible.
But that's probably 6 hours of your time? 7?
If you want to do all of them.
And this is not counting the minor details, right? So, like, if you end up in the occult outcome, that is a major category. The types of minions you have, whether there's a sci-fi element, whether one of the heroes gets killed midway through the battle and it powers up the rest to attack you, or whatever the cliche plays out to be. Like, it would still be under major category 63
I think
of 64.
You'd probably start seeing repetitions inside different playthroughs where you're like,
it would have the same problem of endings as something like Mass Effect has, where you're essentially just getting at the very end, you're getting just, here is set piece 1, play file, set piece 2, play file. And you eventually, after 2 or even, like 3 or 2, I guess, you would start seeing the permutations of this.
It's deterministic,
repeating themselves over and
problem.
over again.
Yeah, and I remember at some point too, like maybe a picture or two in, like we were deciding whether or not the fight should be playable. And because it's like, if you want it to just be raw gimmick, like Flash game, throw it up on Newgrounds, it would be, you don't even play that last fight, it just plays itself out. And then we went, no, like, we can make a fun RPG battle that is going to take some time.
Yeah, a little bit of scope creep, why not? Yeah.
Like let's think about like a last boss fight in a game. Like, you got to actually, go into your items list, check out what you have.
Which means you can win.
Yes, and that inventory is going to be determined by the things you do as well, of course, but there's a game in the actual RPG final battle, which...
final battles can be an hour or 2, easy.
Which we wouldn't want. I think that'd be ridiculous.
Even having a rudimentary fighting engine is going to be a problem.
It's going to take a while.
Because you have this entire RMP system in which you're doing nothing but dialogue trees, setting flags, and then you get to a final battle where there's no precedent for that type of interaction.
Yeah.
So the player wouldn't really know what's going on,
unless
it was also presented as being a series of dialogue.
It's not technically hard.
It would have
the problem
to,
is,
sorry.
how do you communicate that to the user? Like, I hope you're ready for an RPG battle.
Well, the answer would have to more or less be like the most basic Final Fantasy 1 menus possible. It would have to be like attack.
Yeah, it would have to be universal.
Yeah, it would have to be attack,
magic, defend, item.
Yeah, exactly. Right? And then you just, or not even magic, but whatever, attack, tech, defend, item. Like, you literally just go through, and there's nothing else. There's no other place to go with that.
You would really be going through the motions.
And it's still
it would not be. It wouldn't be a satisfying engine. It would just be there for the sake of using it to be able to get to the actual meat.
And I mean, you're still almost looking at a dialogue tree system, but there's numbers, there's RPG things happening.
I mean, you can still have the veneer of an RPG system. It's just not interactive except for some dialogue choices.
Yeah, and if you choose to do like a buff spell, and then use that later, like
what I mean is like just totally non-interactive. Like, aside from some dialogue choices like that come up in the final battle, don't even bother with the like attack, tech, defend, item, because it's the only battle in the game.
But we're not in that. Rather, that's a possibility. But what we're pitching here was like the one that we more or less went, yeah, let's throw a game engine in. Let's throw a playable engine in there too. Why not? Let's have some fun with an RPG based thing. So that would have been in there.
But even at the time, I remember thinking like a visual novel isn't that hard, and making a little sprite walk around a 2D flat RPG plane is not that difficult. Fuck, battle systems take a long time to make.
So what the fuck, Plague? What the fuck?
Yeah, indeed. Okay, so you guys want my evaluation of this?
Crack her open.
Okay.
Make it hurt.
Again, I'm not being mean. I'm just being critical.
now you're being
design.
too nice.
Okay. This idea is shit.
Oh, no!
No, okay. My actual answer for this is you are exhibiting a lot of the problems that I experienced whenever I was working with those small teams at Garage Games, that sort of thing, where you're coming up with, like, most of your premise is very, and I'm going to use this term not in a mean way, but it's very masturbatory. It's very, these are the cool things that we like.
Yeah.
We want this in our shit. And that's what it is.
Young Woolie
and that's
and
all
Josh.
it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the problem.
What do the Japanese
is that
call
that's
it?
all it
Shindy?
is. There's no actual game in this. And I can't tell you that this would have widespread appeal. It wouldn't. But if you're making something for the sake of it being niche, that's fine, as long as that's your goal. So that's not really a problem, so I can't really criticize that component of it. So this idea of having what is essentially a 40-minute long character creation, in which at the very end of the game you just get your results, like it's like a personality quiz, where you're just going through and filling out all the ad-lib things that you want, and then saying, okay, what is the villain that you get whenever you fill in all this cool stuff that you personally enjoy?
INFP.
Exactly. Yeah. The most basic criticism I would have for a new player would be, of course, what about the person that just wants to run around interacting with every object in the room because it's an interactable. They don't know that it's going to be something that's going to result in a hardline decision.
Didn't we have a thing where we said like after
don't select anything unless you want it to be permanent?
No, I think we had a thing where it's like you like either after a certain number of endings or if you've done it once you find it, there's a clock or a watch, a pocket watch.
I love those things in games where the first time you play it, you have no idea what the fuck you're doing. But then in the New Game Plus, they start giving you a little more UI, and they're like, by the way, that's what it does.
So we had like a pocket watch idea for the New Game Plus run to have the ability to... it was either like rewind the last action or like not or pause time and let you investigate things and then choose to resume time afterwards or something like that. Where it's basically like something to make it a bit safer in your clicking and choosing what you want it to
like
get
maybe
to.
Start with
you want an undo mechanic essentially, or do you want something that's for the sake of evaluation where it's non-committal?
You had to earn it, but it was like you had to earn it / find it, but it was essentially like a thing to help you with your non-commitments, but we didn't want you to get it right away.
Bites the dust.
Sounds sort of like you want a bomber's notebook sort of thing for your game. Which was a Majora's Mask mechanic. You got it early on, and it helped you track the paths and actions of NPCs.
Yeah, the actual chart. Well, that would more or less be your stats.
It's like a flow chart in a VN.
Yeah, that'd be your ending screen anyway. To be honest, like the ending screen would obviously show you here's the number you got, and here's the ones you didn't. You know, but
okay, there are two main ways that you can criticize all this.
Yeah.
Then one would be criticizing it from the perspective of, is this going to be marketable? And I would say, no, it's not going to be.
Oh, yeah, nobody's going to pay money for this. This is like donation ware.
If you're making it with the mindset of, fuck you, it's for me, then none of that matters at all.
Game Jam
because that's
product.
your objective.
Game Jam like thing, almost, yeah.
Right. So in that case, if your only concern is whether or not you are going to be personally happy with it and whether or not you can actually produce it for yourself in a span of time and gather the art assets and everything else together, then your only concerns are going to be technical ones. And in that case, it sounds like actually, like you said, you could produce it fairly easily. It's just a matter of time. So in that sense, the idea is not a failed one. It's just simply one that you don't want to commit the investment towards just for your own sake. So do you consider that to be a failure?
So is it that... So it's not complete shit. However...
It's not complete shit because you don't consider it to be shit, in theory.
The expense of making it would not be worth the level of the level of appeal it has.
I think the energy input to make this game
is up to you.
Might not be worth the reward we get out of it, which, you know, it's very nebulous.
This is a wider-reaching thing about just life in general, but the things that you commit your time towards and the things that you consider to be worth your time are going to be worth your time as long as you consider that to be something that was worth it in the first place.
I understand that idea. Yeah, okay.
So there's lots of things that I will draw, and I enjoy drawing them, but I'll never post them because no one gives a shit about this, or I'll just delete the whole canvas, and then that's the end of it. Because I just have an idea. I wonder if so-and-so had this on them. Like, what if this character had a helmet or something? And I'll just load up the canvas and draw it real fast and put like a little helmet on their head and kind of sit there and visualize it and go, yeah, okay, that looks kind of interesting. And then I'll just close it. I'll never upload, never do anything with it. But that was a success because I got what I needed out of that experience. So if you're making a game, you don't have to make it have as widespread of appeal as it possibly could have. As long as you personally find value in what you are doing, then it is going to be a success.
I can think
now, whether you want it to be a financial success is a different story.
Yeah, that's definitely not...
It's not going to happen with this game.
No, that was not part of the conversation.
No,
it was really just...
I will tell you that, not with this game.
I can think of much worse things to do with my day than work on this game if I had nothing better to do. But that's the question. Do I have things that interest me more?
My general idea, I said very early on that I had a similar idea to this. It was not this, but my general idea was that just of course, I didn't develop this at all. I didn't make any concept sheets or anything. But my sitting around eating nachos idea was, what if you had an RPG, except instead of playing, the hero, you play the villain, and the course of leveling up, you sort of turn into this Final Fantasy-esque monster, in which you're actually doing character creation on your body as you level up over the course of 20 hours of gameplay, doing ordinary things. And that was it.
This is why we get along.
It would otherwise be an ordinary RPG.
He likes character creators as much as I do. But guess what? No one else gives a fuck about character creators.
Go play the character creation in Fallout 4 till you're,
Yeah.
I think also
people did some crazy shit in
2012 when we thought this up. Like, one, we were working on other things at the time, but also we didn't have the ability to make this.
No.
Like, we didn't have an artist who wanted to work on it. We didn't have a programmer or a composer or anything. So it was like one day.
This is the biggest problem with these small projects. It's just finding people. Thankfully, the thing that I'm working on right now, I'm writing out the script for it at the moment. In theory, if I committed the time to it, I could do the scripting, but some people have volunteered and said that they could do it. But I want to make sure that I have the script and everything done before I start worrying about that. I could draw some of the images. I couldn't do everything because that's too much of a time sort of choke point for me. I could hire out for a background artist. I would still need music. I would probably still need some testers or something like that. I don't think I would need much else, though. So if you're doing sort of a small project like this, it's easy to come up with ideas, but especially like for you guys. It's like, Josh, you're an artist to some degree.
I'm a programmer.
Programmer?
Yep.
You said that you could draw. Maybe, I guess it was just Woolie saying how bad you become.
Like, I can communicate an idea.
Josh used to hand me little Post-it notes with mecha doodles on them.
They were shit.
They were the worst.
Okay, so it's not something that it's something that you would have to find an external resource for, in other words.
Yeah.
So you have a programmer, you have your writer in theory. Woolie can do supplementary work, that sort of thing. But you still need a lead artist, someone to do your backgrounds and all these character sprites and all these motions.
Yeah.
Especially if you're going to have a combat engine, you would need to develop all these characters. Like, developing a character for a traditional RPG is going to take the same amount of time as it would for something that's going to be a 30-minute long game.
But if it existed...
So you would still need to have animation
But if
sets.
it existed, would you find it fun for a second?
A second? It sounded like something I would kind of mess around with for maybe one playthrough and then close and forget that I ever played.
There you go. Okay. Like business hat off, like fun hat on. Would you even? And if once you got to the battle, you think you'd just shut it down right there?
To the actual battle?
Or would it just be like...
Depends on the whole appeal of doing... This game has the same appeal that doing something like a discover what school you are in Harry Potter world or something. Like one of those tests online. That's the appeal of this. It's, ooh, what am I?
Yeah.
The sort of self-centered nature that everyone has.
Everyone wants to know. Everyone wants to know about them.
Yeah.
Post your results about you.
Well, if you could post
the appeal
online,
would be, what sort of villain am I?
What villain you got, yeah.
If you could post your villain afterwards and add a fucking social media button to it, and then
post your results on Twitter.
Tweet your fucking
tool.
Egotistical
fucking piece of shit asshole. Here's your fucking villain. You like it?
Yeah.
Did you like it? Download our game, ass.
I'm horse rapist Kefka.
Wow.
Oh, congratulations.
Wow. I mean, look. The other thing that comes to mind is the idea...
You did have the right idea. You did have the right idea of starting small. But you made the standard problem of, all these ideas, and raking your arms around the entire table and pulling all the toys in. That's where your problem
The
came
other thing
from.
that comes to mind is when like we were trying to figure out a name, like 35 till the heroes arrive, or heroes arrive in an hour, or whatever the fuck the case was. I couldn't get over the fact that people on a glance will be like, oh, like half-minute hero.
Yeah.
Like, are you guys just doing half-minute hero? Because obviously this looks and sounds like half-minute hero, but it would be like
coming up with names is a nightmare for me personally. A lot of it has that same problem of looking at the blank canvas. That it could be anything, so there's no excuse for it being bad. So it's like when there's so many options, there's 99.9999% chance that it's going to be something stupid when it could have been the good thing.
Sometimes the good thing is the best part of the project with the name, and makes people like it more because of how good the name is.
Trigun.
Yeah.
Trigun means fucking nothing.
It doesn't mean anything. It's stupid.
Gungrave.
Cowboy.
I guess the Trigun. He was a gun the whole time.
He's the
Trigun.
He has 3. Yeah. Anyway, that's it. It's like I couldn't get away from that part where I'm like, because even Half Minute Hero is a parody of RPGs, and you speed things up, but it was very much like not that gameplay at all. But I remember we couldn't agree on or come up with a version of the name that like conveyed what we wanted, but was also different enough.
You could literally.
Let me ask you.
There's so many different ways.
Let me ask you some follow-up question to this. Let's say that you decide to follow up on this idea in the future. In theory,
the point of this
what
podcast
would you do
is to fucking let it go, Plague. Stop doing this to me.
This is my point, though. The failures are not dead ends. This is something that everyone needs to realize about anything as far as like creativity or development in technologies or medicine or whatever it is. It has multiple applications. Is that whenever you hit a roadblock, it doesn't necessarily mean that you just stop, give up, go back to where your starting point was and start again.
I guess.
Everything should evolve to some degree.
Yeah, okay.
The ideas that you're laying out here are fine ideas, it's just that the way that you're applying them is not a good idea. So if you were to try to take the spirit of this general idea and say if you had created art assets for this, which you didn't or anything, but if you had done so, then how could you reapply those in a way towards a new project? What would you do?
I mean, I'm still in love with character creation that is like a process and not just a series of toggles.
That's fine.
That's a fun idea, and I really enjoy not knowing what the outcome would be, and I enjoy like making fun of tropes. So it's hard to really say what else this.
No, that's good. Those are good answers because the point of any sort of thing like this is the reason why you're doing it in the first place is because you found a value and love in some element of it, and it's important to not get attached to the minutia of it, but to identify what it is about the core elements that are appealing to you, because there's lots of ways to build around that.
There's something about not knowing what you're going to get, like not knowing the consequences of your actions.
I would say that that's the appeal of a lot of these supposed split story paths in games, whether it's Walking Dead, whether it's Mass Effect or anything like that.
Yeah.
That's the initial appeal, although it doesn't really work too well because of the asset problem.
I was going to say, like, imagine a Telltale game where your choices did matter.
Oh, that'd be great.
And they weren't fake branches, they were real ones, right? But in this case, it's, obviously going, like, fucking wild with it.
I mean, this isn't even that wild. It's just only having 4 combinations is boring.
Some things work better than others. Remember, what were the names of those stupid games? The Fable. Remember how in the Fable games, if your actions were evil or good, then your physical appearance could change, that sort of thing?
Yeah.
That's very simple, but it works. In this case, there's only 2 real outcomes. You either move from normal to light, in which case you get a little halo or whatever, or you move from normal to dark and you get your horns and so forth and so on. But if it was a little bit more complicated than that, but it was only visual, if it was only for you, then I would think that would carry a lot more weight than having to rely on dialogue trees and flagging huge charts of data. Things like that serve the same core function without being as complicated.
I guess the idea is it a story game that happens to have a lot of art assets, or is it a bunch of art assets that happen to have a story?
Right. And I definitely feel I'd want the story aspect to be the fun takeaway. I'd like you to really have a full fleshed out vision of what that character is by the end. And I mean, hell, you can even add modifier. This is not to feature creep it, but let's say you cut down on the number of outcomes, but instead made it so that winning or losing that battle creates 2 different ending variations, right? You would still have a full tale, right? Albeit sped up and told in a the things have already happened kind of way. But it would be sort of, oh my god, something just fucking hit me. Did we not say 35 because of fucking Adrian Veidt and the idea of I did it 35 minutes ago? Is that where that came from?
Absolutely.
That's where it came from, isn't it?
Oh
my...
Pulling an Ozymandias.
Yeah! It was the idea of you are the villain and you get to do the thing 35 minutes ago, so when the heroes arrive, you've already done it! Oh my god, it just hit me! Oh, fuck! Whenever Matt makes fun of me for quoting that stupid thing, it goes so much deeper. I had a whole fucking game idea based on... Oh my god, I'm losing my shit.
So fucking masturbatory.
Oh, dude.
The whole idea is your hand around your dick. That's what it is. The whole chart, all these flags are just
minutes.
up, down, stroke after stroke.
You did it, fucking Ozymandias. You did it. And you get to be in the fucking tower when the Watchmen break in, and you get to give your monologue off and feel cool for doing it.
I mean, you could strip down the game to just that.
Oh, wow.
It's not even a game, then. It's just you're watching a cutscene of a cool thing that you had an idea
then you
about.
attach
That's what
a
you're
game
writing.
to it, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's what you really want to do. You want to do like a comic at that point.
Now, I hate to fucking do this with these ideas, but you have to do it. You throw the what-ifs in there, right? You throw the what-ifs. So, like, what if you could fail or win, and that changes what happens? Right. What if the end of this process, you now have a character with a full backstory, a villain, that is created as a file that then goes into something else?
Okay, so you finish that, and then the heroes and the villain that got generated, you now play as the heroes, and you have an entire RPG to get to that villain.
Oh my god, Josh. That's stupid. That's impossible. That's actually not possible. There's
totally
too much.
Possible.
There's too much there. But that would be fucking nuts.
You know what's going to happen when you get there. But
You've already done it. You've already played it out.
I have had this voice call so many times with the smaller developers. Like, it would be so badass if we could do this thing while I'm just sitting there.
Yeah,
I know it would be, but we need to talk about the actual game now.
So it's we need like a fucking sound drop for like the feature creep bell, you know? Like, oh, but what if... Ding!
I love how we could not strip this idea down and figure out the core mechanic that would work, but we can totally just add more features.
You can creep the fuck up on it, right?
Yeah, because you're writing.
Yeah.
That's what you're doing. Like, it's so... Like, this behavior that you're exhibiting is great for one thing, and it's writing things. If you're doing a film, if you're doing a game that just has a linear-ass story, what it's not good for is throwing all the ideas in a big salad and tossing it around and going, here, make this into a video game.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Because every 13-year-old kid that's ever lived has thought, well, what if you just had every game in one? It's a first-person shooter, and it's a fighting game, and also you fly into space. Mm-hmm. I'll call it No Man's Sky.
And that's why, wow. I'm fucking beside myself, but that's why, besides the art asset reflecting your space or monster or sci-fi or whatever genre you fucking end up being, besides reflecting that, the actual end case in terms of like what you'd want your programmer to have to do could not call for, okay, but if you become a martial arts master, if you become the equivalent of Akuma, we now have a fighting game engine in this game. You can't do that. You can't make the genre change according to the...
Think about this.
You cannot.
Imagine this game as a prototype with no art assets.
Yeah, text
and menus only.
Yeah.
You could still make it.
You could still make it. In
You'd
fact,
have to
you could
narrate
make more.
everything.
Yeah, you could make more even. But you could make the...
Sure, you could make a text adventure.
You could make
That'd probably be the easiest way of making this, if it was just an old-fashioned text adventure.
You could text the fuck out of this, really. Come to think of it.
Yeah, especially if you have someone that's just going mad with power and typing all sorts of random anime bullshit that they've seen over the years.
And if you've got, like, cut-paste paragraphs for cut-paste Mad Libs, to let the lore dump, that would be one way of fucking getting there, for sure.
And that sounds like it might be moderately easy. It is
No
not.
way.
That gets really, really tiring.
You have to have someone that enjoys that process, you know?
You just get a whole bunch of people in a room, and you're like, everything goes in. There'll be a round of edits after, but we're just taking all your dumb ideas. In they go.
And effectively, you'd have the programmer create. What you'd want to do is you're the person that is. It's your idea, so not blah. I'm not saying that. I'm saying the hypothetical you would be us going okay, we'll do all the heavy lifting with the writing and shit. But someone would have to make a program, make code that you could build off of, right? So you're like, I want to add another ending permutation.
Yeah,
just tell me how to throw that in there, you know?
RenPy does it all, man.
There you go. Yeah. So you could definitely do it that way. But the version of this where you get a full RPG to play after you do that final battle is
I don't know. Go talk to Square Enix.
That is even if it was a micro RPG, even if it was a 2-hour story, you know what I mean? The intro to an Octopath character, that's still super impressive as a project. If that actually has details that that don't overlap in extremely obvious ways from one story to another.
I don't know. I would be kind of happy with just a text adventure.
I could imagine that too, though I love art, so I like, those ideas.
If you can't reel in all these ideas, which it sounds like you guys are having a tremendous problem doing, then you have to scale back your assets. So either you're going to end up with a game that is a text adventure that tries to explore as many of these things as you possibly can, move up from that to maybe an ASCII game or something, where it's very bare minimum. You're working with Dwarf Fortress tile sets or something.
You'd have to have...
In which case, you will have to move further away from having lots of dialogue, up to the other extreme of a game in which there is no dialogue at all. Most of it is visual, and you're relying on the player to project what they are interpreting from what they're seeing onto the character to create the narrative.
And the feature...
Which would probably be too complicated.
The feature creep we just added to would have to be there's the layer and there's one town, and each choice you make makes a specific NPC appear that you have to deal with, it couldn't be anything beyond the most not predictable, but it has has to be a controlled population.
Yeah. No, I'm sorry
don't
I
do
said
that
idea.
shit. Yeah. Stop doing
regret
that.
giving you that idea.
Those are bad thoughts to have. Those are hurting you in the long run.
Dude.
Everyone listening to this, learn from Woolie's mistakes, learn from Josh's mistakes. Do not do that. Do not get so excited that you start building huge mountains to climb.
The cage is open. The birds are flying out, man. The doves or the ravens, whatever they are, they're out there. They're really weird looking, wonky birds, but they're flying. They're not going to make it too far out of the nest. But the point is that the idea is out there, and furthermore, I know you said failure is not an endpoint.
It isn't.
However, putting it out there in the public eye, to telling people about this stuff, to me, is that thing. Or at the very least, it's a letting go of it.
Hey,
and the reason why...
If Fortnite can come out and PUBG is still there going, they stole our stuff, and the court is like, no, they didn't, then you would be fine.
But the reason why is I always keep that thing in mind where don't talk about your actual ideas because... You
shouldn't.
You rob yourself of motivation to actually complete them, because when you tell people about what you're doing and you think it's so cool, you get to feel some of that coolness in their awe at your idea, even though you haven't done anything yet,
Here's some human truths about that. Most people have great ideas. Most people are just sitting around thinking about, this is my favorite thing, wouldn't it be cool if this or that... Everyone does that. Absolutely everyone. And it's a very adult behavior to sit around thinking about all the things that you could be doing. If I just had enough time, if I wasn't doing this other thing, I could do this. And they fantasize about that. And the fact that they're fantasizing about it is enough to give them the satisfaction that they otherwise would have gained from actually doing it. So most adults do that all the time, where they live in the fantasy, never actually actualize themselves, and accomplish nothing.
I mean, you got shit to do.
Yeah.
Got to go to work.
So it's really just verbalizing
the soccer
something.
Practice.
Yeah. It's verbalizing something we do anyway. And if you happen to be, well, the thing is that this applies to like if you are a creative type to begin with, though, you know.
Yeah, a lot of this is personality.
Yeah, like
you know how it's said that the difference between the rich and the poor is usually just that the rich were the people that just did it.
Yeah.
Like the rich guy had an idea the same as the poor guy had an idea. But the poor guy's like, well, I'll just do it tomorrow. Like I'm doing that right now. I'm thinking about, I should talk to like Vanguard or something about investing. But I haven't done it yet. And I haven't done it because things have really been coming up. I just wake up and it's like, I don't want to do that today. So I haven't done it. But if, like, the rich guy over there, he just does that shit. And it's not because he's a better person. It's just because he decided one day, I'll just do it. And then it worked.
Or you can
that's all it was.
Or you can just pat and just sit on your couch and hate making things forever and hope it works out, and sometimes it does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have everything fall into your lap.
I had way more fun talking about this than I would making it.
I'm glad. You know what, Josh?
That's part of the problem.
But that makes me feel good about maybe this podcast wasn't such a bad idea. I don't know yet. But this at least felt good to talk about. I agree. I had fun talking about it. It's out there. And who knows? Maybe someone will be like, I'm going to steal that shit. And I'll be like, yeah, bro.
Yeah, go for it,
What the fuck you want from me?
Or maybe someone in the comment section will leave a comment saying this idea was terrible and you should feel bad.
No.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
I always read all the comments. I can't take a bad one.
Yeah. Hey, maybe that person leaving that comment, they'll appear on the show, and then we can rip apart their good idea, huh? No, we got to get through a mountain of ours first. But that's a decent
Maybe that's
start.
already happened.
That's a decent start. Okay, the light on my microphone is literally flashing, telling me the battery is about to run out. So that's as good a time to stop as any, wouldn't you say?